All right, I think that's everybody in. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Gloria Hernandez. I'm the director of Downtown Odessa. Thank you all for being here this evening. I'm going to explain a little bit about the process and what we've been working on and what you're kind of here to see tonight. This is a 6-month contract with Gateway Planning. They are a Dallas-based firm. They work on urban design and urban planning. They've worked across the nation for many downtowns, as well as in North Texas. Our design committee through Downtown Odessa's board was formed about the summer of last year in 2015. They were formed and created because they were on a mission to create a design and a theme for Downtown Odessa. Those design committee members and board members with Downtown Odessa, if you're here tonight, will you please stand for me? Be recognized. Thank you. It is the vision of those gentlemen and ladies on that design committee that we're here today. We went and entered into an RFP process where we started a search back in the fall to try to find an urban design firm that we thought would help us with this task to create a walkable, a pedestrian-friendly, a active restaurant, retail, entertainment district all within downtown and bring that vitality back to life. So Gateway Planning is ultimately the firm they decided on. They're here with us today. Again, this is a 6-month process. They started this January. They hope to be completed and done by July. What we will see at the completion is a master plan for Downtown Odessa, looking at entertainment districts, restaurant, retail districts in downtown, multifamily housing opportunities in downtown. This is the first public meeting. They've been here for 2 days now, sketching, designing, photographing. They've had community stakeholder interviews with some businesses in downtown, a lot of the employers downtown. And so tonight is a culmination of the information that they've received, the feedback they've received from the community, and their thoughts and ideas. And we're also going to leave some time at the end for you to give us your feedback and your thoughts and ideas on where they're going. So I'm going to turn it over to Scott Polikoff, who's the principal with Gateway Planning.
Thank you, Gloria. It's a pleasure to be back. Thank you, and we really appreciate the opportunity to work with you all. I want to introduce the rest of my team. We have Kelsey Berry and Brad Lonberger and Miloslav Sekic and Guang Ai. So and I would say the extended team includes your leadership and the various folks that work for the city and Downtown Odessa and the EDC, and we've touched a lot of folks already. So this presentation represents a culmination of an exploration of what we think is possible for your downtown. Also, we're no strangers to West Texas. We actually, a couple years ago, completed a redevelopment and a comprehensive plan for Lake Nasworthy. I have a feeling some of you spend time there. Another gem of West Texas that has a lot of potential. We're also working on a private side for development in Clovis, New Mexico for Sid Strebick, who's a great guy, a community leader there. So when we were talking to the Public Works and Engineering folks today, for example, we were talking about the drainage challenges in this region. And we said, yes, we understand that, because that's very similar to what we're facing in Clovis right now. So when it rains, it really does. We'll just dive right in, and then happy to take any questions or comments. And then after that's completed, we'd be happy to, we've got some of what we're going to have in this presentation up on the boards in the back. So if you want to take a closer look and you have any questions. And then Gloria, at the, when we're wrapping up, we'll go over the next steps. But we'll be back in May for a final presentation. So why the initiative? My friend who's the head of the Metropolitan Planning Organization in Dallas-Fort Worth, Michael Morris, said that all great things come in threes. If it's two, then you're just being forced to make a bad choice, and if it's more than three, then you won't remember anything. So the three things that we picked in terms of why the initiative are, I think, number one, partnerships. What's clear to us in Odessa is that already in downtown there are a lot of partnerships. There are specific projects that are being executed that have been in the works for some time that are public-public and public-private partnerships. So I think that's probably one of the most important, is that there are several partnerships that are already emerging that this initiative will reinforce both projects in terms of also relationships. I would say also a lot of folks talked early on, and Kelsey will provide more insight about what we discovered. Really, downtown is a neighborhood. And it's clear that successful downtowns have people living in downtowns. And one of the things that we've heard is that I don't feel comfortable at night or when the sun goes down or when I'm downtown. I've spent several evenings in downtown, and it's not a place that you should feel uncomfortable, except for sometimes you're the only person walking around. That makes you feel, I think, uncomfortable. But I think that's a problem that's easily solved. And then finally, you already have some really good things already happening in downtown. In fact, you've got some businesses represented here tonight. I was just talking to Danny with Hang 'em High. The Millers, we've talked to the Millers, they're Tack and Saddle. Restaurants, we've had great meals already from several of the restaurants. So I don't think that your downtown isn't already rocking along. It's just below the surface, and so there's a lot of potential. Why the initiative is also, there's a regional economic development strategy, and this is out of the recent Development Corporation strategic plan for Odessa. And the last item on this slide that was prepared by that entity that looks to support regional economic development and growth is downtown revitalization. So I think it's very, very, very clear that everybody understands that a very healthy and successful downtown is good for everybody, even if you don't see yourself necessarily living downtown or opening a business downtown. But it's certainly good for the tax base, and it's certainly important from a tourism standpoint. A lot of people drive through this area, and there's no reason why you can't capture a larger share of folks coming through here. A lot of people travel with families for medical purposes. You get a lot of regional visits because of your health care and UT, Permian Basin, and Texas Tech. There's no reason why you can't capture a lot of those visitors in downtown, for example. And so then, to give you a little more detail on what we've been engaged to do, calling it setting the stage for creating some real momentum for your downtown. We've gone through an exploration of downtown. Kelsey's going to talk a little bit more about that. We've gone through an interview of stakeholders. By the way, if anybody wants to talk to us, my cell phone number is 512-784-3527, 512-784-3527, and if you didn't get it, you're free to come up afterwards. I'll give it to you then. We just don't always get to everybody, and we're happy to talk to anybody who wants to talk to us and give us their thoughts. We undertook a market study to understand what the potential is today in terms of the demand for certain types of businesses and activities in downtown, and I'll talk briefly about that in a sec. We did, over the last couple of days, went through an intensive urban design study of what the development potential could be and what it would look like and what the infrastructure needs might be. And yet to come will be a design standards or design guidelines document that will be used to guide folks who want to take advantage of incentives for facade improvements or infrastructure, and for the planning department to guide redevelopment. And then we're also looking at the city's ordinances and the zoning districts for downtown. They look pretty good in terms of encouraging the kind of downtown development and mixed use that downtowns like to have when they become neighborhoods. But there are some tweaks that we're going to recommend. And then we're going to make some recommendations on some additional implementation issues in terms of longer term infrastructure and how some of the current projects that are in the pipeline could be leveraged even further, or some that aren't yet but have been discussed for some time. For example, the redesign and reconstruction of the Ector County Courthouse, for example. So we've done 4 big items, culminating with the 4th tonight. We have 2 more to go, and we are on a fast track, and Gloria, we're going to make it. So, just to give you an example of where we see our work used and how it really translates into the community and into the market. We, about 6 or 7 years ago, were hired by the city of Owensboro, Kentucky, on the Ohio River during the recession. And you're going to say, well, Owensboro, why Owensboro? The reason I picked Owensboro is this is a place that is not necessarily in a big major metro area. It's in western Kentucky. It's not on the east over by Lexington and Louisville and over by Ohio, but it has a history, it has authenticity. It's where bluegrass was given birth to. And their downtown, like your downtown, once had a very strong cultural role to play. And so we built on that strong cultural role, went through many of the same steps we're going through with you. There were some very significant public investments made that we helped the local leadership position for additional private investment. And since that time, they literally have seen more than $100 million in private, not just public, but private redevelopment activity. Several corporations that had moved out into the suburbs have now moved back into downtown Owensboro. The restaurants are thriving. And you don't have a waterfront like Owensboro does. But what you do have actually is you have the DNA of a great downtown. I need to be careful. Midland's a great place, and we've heard great things about Midland. We went over to Midland for dinner last night. I think you have greater potential than downtown Midland. I think the DNA of your downtown, the authenticity, the scale, the variety of things, I really believe that you have the potential that it takes sometimes an outsider to come. But, you know, Gloria, when we first talked, you said the same thing. So Gloria and I knew each other briefly when we were both working in Irving. This was the image of the convention center and the hotel that was developed there. That's a pure coincidence. But like I said, several large and small investments were not because of what we did, but because of what we did to get folks in a position to take advantage of the potential in Owensboro. So, Kelsey, why don't you talk a little bit about what we heard and what we saw, but we like to really understand what's going on. I like to run when I travel, otherwise I don't. But a couple nights evenings I ran through downtown really to understand what's going on. Kelsey, I know you've spent a lot of time, so if you want to add to this, please do.
So like I guess he said, my name is Kelsey Berry, and I'm also with Gateway Planning. I've been here several times now over the past 3 months visiting your downtown. I was here in January for a brief initial visit, and if you saw me walking around taking pictures, I'm sorry if it was awkward. But I was also here, I got the chance to speak to a lot of you in February, which was really great, gave me a lot of insight into what's going on downtown. And we heard a lot of things, and surprisingly, from the wide variety of people who we talked to, from business owners to city leaders to people out from, who've been out of the region, who've come in here, there was a lot of pattern. Probably the biggest was that downtown really needs a nightlife. A lot of it basically shuts down at 3 p.m. And you have two big draws there that have employees and visitors way past that who currently have nowhere to go. So that is obviously, we heard that across the pattern, and that was something that really stuck out to us, because after our meetings were done at 5:30, 6 o'clock, we walk out and we're like, where'd everybody go? So that was like the biggest key element out of all of those. But then of course, how do you get that nightlife? And part of that is, you need people living in downtown. The neighborhoods that surround downtown are great. They're established, they're long lasting, but no one's living in downtown. So there's no apartments that are higher quality, or townhomes, or small houses that are integrated into the fabric. So we need to bring downtown residential here. That can be done, especially for employees at the hospital. A lot of the hospital staff talked about, my employees have to drive in from out of town. There's no place for them to be close to work. That was a big issue for a lot of people, especially who want to live close to where they work. Additionally, one of the good things that we heard that was a positive, businesses are opening along Grand Street again. What? Oh. Which is great. You want to see that momentum. You want to see people opening up stores and reinvesting into their properties. And that's, a good positive for sign of things to come. And then you really want to make sure, a lot of people wanted to see how we could leverage the momentum from the hospitals at either end of Fifth Street. How do we get them into downtown and work on that retail and those big numbers of people who are here every day? And then additionally, one of the biggest things that we heard was that downtown suffers from a perception problem. A lot of people think that it's unsafe to be here after hours, that it's dangerous, dark, and a lot of those are simple fixes, and you can just change the way the lighting, whether through industrial improvements or even just getting people here again after hours is a way to change that perception, because like Scott mentioned, we've been here after hours, and even with me walking around taking photos, I never felt unsafe walking through downtown. And then additionally, a big thing that we heard, a lot of ways to capture the character and the uniqueness of downtowns is through the public art. And it's, finding ways to integrate that. You guys have a lot of great murals on a lot of your buildings. They're all beautiful and they all are different and capture different moments in Odessa's history. So how can we embrace that and really reflect that in the local culture and the businesses that we see? And additionally, we need more incentives for development in downtown. We heard that from a lot of business owners and from people who want to move into downtown. What are those incentives that are available for us to redo a building or to make an improvement to the building? Or even just to open a business. A lot of the people don't really have that guiding path at the moment to find those ways, so how can we help with that? And then additionally, just pailing off of that, there's no ready-made spaces for startup businesses. A lot of businesses or entrepreneurs who have great ideas, who could do a really well business, don't have that startup money, and there's not any really good place in downtown that they could just move into. The buildings need a lot of work or a lot of rehab, so how can we help with that as well?
If I could add to that, Gloria, you get calls all the time, and I think both Glorias, and Haley. So I think that's a very, very healthy sign.
Yeah.
That's a very, very healthy sign that you actually are trying to figure out how to accommodate people making those calls.
Yeah.
Oh.
Did you turn it off? So just these are some images that we saw from our walks through downtown of just the little moments that we think are Odessa moments. The great murals, Casa Ortiz, the Cowboy Texas mural, and you have some great signs. The Scott Theater sign is really unique and something that you don't see in a lot of places. A lot of those buildings have probably been torn down previously. You have the great LOC sign, just capturing that moment from when Odessa was really at its height, and everyone talks about all Grand Street being booming and the parades and walking between the department stores. And you have the improvements along 5th Street and the lights and just those unique little small things throughout downtown. And then that was it.
The other thing we looked at is specifically the market potential. Jason Klonch at Catalyst Commercial is on our team, and Jason was actually here yesterday. But we did a much more extensive market study than I'm going to go through here briefly tonight. But a couple of things that were very significant. Number one is that you can see our conservative estimate is there's demand today for about 150 residential units in downtown per year. And the numbers, as you can see, approximately 40 to 50 in the rent range of 500 to 750. But even above $1,000 a month for rent, there's conservative demand for 60 to 70 units. And so that's significant. That assumes about a 15% capture of the amount of demand in the city as a whole. The other thing is we've done an extensive study on the amount of demand that's not being met for retail, restaurants, shopping, and those sorts of things. And it's no secret that a lot of people in Odessa drive out of town and spend their money in other places, and then they drive back. We think a significant amount of that could be captured in downtown, and there is absolutely demand there to be met. But one of the things we'll talk about in a second is how do you capture that demand? We see over and over again in downtowns creating a cluster and an opportunity where you both have people living downtown, so at least there are people around. You'll never have in the short term enough people living downtown to satisfy the demand for significant restaurant retail. But if there are people around, then others will come downtown and stay downtown to eat a meal or to hang out. The other thing we looked at is you recently went through a comprehensive plan process, and the Freese and Nichols plan took a look at the downtown opportunity, and I just wanted you to know that we're building on that work and on that analysis. Then what we did is Brad and Kelsey looked at just some basic elements of what's going on in downtown. And we did hear from people there's a concern about parking. But if you look at the amount of parking there is, the brown or the surface parking lots, and the purple lines, which might be a little bit hard to see, are the on-street parking. So you have actually a lot of parking. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean it's in the right place, for example, in terms of people driving into the two hospitals and the businesses around the hospitals. But really, there's more of a management opportunity here than there is a parking problem. What you don't have is obviously a lot of public green space, and what you do have is used quite extensively. The other thing is that you have a drainage, regional drainage problem, which you can see crescendos pretty significantly into downtown. And I know this is not anything new to you all, but when you see this floodplain map, it's very, very apparent. And so Brad met today with the Public Works and the Engineering Department and others, the Parks Department, to begin the conversation about the potential for how a regional strategy can be undertaken, and potentially working with the state of Texas for some grants and some other resources. We do believe that long-term this drainage challenge needs to be met in order for redevelopment to be the most successful it can be. So what we did is we took all of this information and we went through a pretty simple analytical process. What's already happening in downtown, the market study, the authentic DNA of your downtown, the feedback we receive from folks, understanding the different projects. And we started first understanding what the civic anchors are. And again, you'll probably be able to see these in more detail when you look at the document. Did we bring that over? No? Oh, that's okay. No, that's okay. But you can see the blue. You've got the police department, you've got the two hospitals, you've got the post office, you've got City Hall, but it's when you come into downtown, you really don't have any strong sense of where. You've got several very important churches, the Methodist Church, the Baptist Church, but you don't know really where they are. It's not intuitive to you. So then we said, okay, if we were to look at catalytic redevelopment potential, we think there's a lot of potential throughout downtown, but where could we start to encourage redevelopment to take advantage of specific activity that's already underway? So for example, this is the location of the new hotel and convention center in the Ector Theater, and coming over to Grant Street, and then of course you've got the courthouse. What is the opportunity with the activity that's already happening on Grant between 4th and 5th in terms of the Millers, Izzy's, the salon, the diner around the corner? What's the opportunity to connect that business activity on Grant back towards the new hotel and conference center that's going to be finally designed and under construction? I don't mean finally in that it's taken a long time, in that it's going to go into the final design process hopefully later this year and open up soon. So what's the opportunity to connect this major development with maybe a cluster of small restaurants in between what's already happening over there on Grant Street? And then we identified what we thought were candidates for infill residential, both over by both hospitals, but also maybe by a reinvented courthouse and a new park. Well, there we go. And then we added back in the plazas and green space to begin to then say, okay, what's the relationship of the major civic spaces and civic places, the churches, the public buildings, the catalytic redevelopment opportunities, and then Noel Park, the new plaza that's going to be associated with the hotel and convention center, and potentially a plaza and park that could go down where the current courthouse is located if the courthouse is reconstructed somewhere nearby. And then how are those new civic opportunities and new plazas and green spaces related? And that's when we began to look at a connection for circulation and a potential platform to connect all these spaces up using 5th Street, Texas, Grant, and having a circulation. Some investments already been made on 5th Street, but I think what's important about this is that you all already have a successful downtown in terms of festivals and events. And what we thought is, and this is our really big vision, and we're going to develop this more in graphic detail between now and May, what is the opportunity for all of these major plazas and green spaces associated with the potential redevelopment of the courthouse, the existing parks, and the new plaza at the hotel relative to the relationship of Fifth Street and Grant in Texas? What's the opportunity for this to be really a grand platform to have additional larger festivals, maybe multiple locations for music? We were stunned when we found out that you get 40,000 plus people for your Christmas parade. So it's not unheard of that maybe you could actually have additional larger events. So that set the stage for a illustrative master plan where we took all of this and said, okay, at the building scale, looking at existing buildings and the blocks and sites that are undeveloped or sites that could be redeveloped. And by the way, Brad's going to talk about this in more detail. If you own a building and we covered it up and it's gone, my apologies. This is just illustrative. It doesn't mean that it's going to happen. It doesn't mean, and I always have to say this, that there's going to be condemnation. It doesn't mean that anybody's going to force you to sell your property or to build on your property if you own a lot today and you see something that you hadn't thought about. But this is government trying to figure out how to make you more successful with your property. So I want to stress that this is for illustrative purposes only. But this is the culmination of what could 20 or 25 blocks look like in the heart of your downtown with the different things that we looked at connected and linked and phased. And then one of the things we'll do going forward is we'll take this concept, refine it, but we're going to come up with what's called a merchandising strategy, and we're going to get into more detail as to how the concept that Brad's going to walk you through could actually be phased in terms of some of that general demand that's out there at the block scale.
I'm going to take that.
Got that?
I'm going to take control over so he doesn't flip it on me. So I'm going to orient you a little bit just so you know which streets are where. We've got 2nd Street on the bottom right here. You've got Grant Avenue going up north and south roughly right here. Texas. You've got 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th. The convention center project is right on this location here. You can see the convention, the hotel, the garage, and the plaza. The Ector Theater still staying. One of the key elements of this plan is that all the red are new introduced buildings, whereas the gray are kind of the existing ones that would stay or be built off of. It's probably really hard to see due to the lighting, but I will be in the back, and if you have any questions, I can walk you through it again when we're back there. But so you can barely see the fade of this pink right here, but this is kind of the walkway along 5th Street, which could bring you around or even down into this courthouse square. We do have designed in a plaza and green space. Maintaining a lot of the existing trees because they're really awesome old growth trees around the courthouse, and then the new courthouse would go just adjacent to that. So you'd actually have the courthouse facing that square and plaza. Behind that, some of that infill residential, making sure that we're pulling in some of the parking interior. We showed a variety of different options, one with garages on the inside, parking garages or structures. Some surface lot options, wrapping around, but taking full advantage of the street frontage so that we have homes and frontages that actually take advantage of the street frontage and be a part of the neighborhood. And then one of the things we'd been talking about was that retail cluster. I wish we had zoomed in, but I can show it to you in the back. But that J.C. Penney building being reconstructed with a little plaza or eating space outside on the corner of Grant and 5th, as well as some parking in the back, right next to the existing restaurant. This is enormous. Right there, providing a little bit of outdoor seating for her so she can expand service possibly, and then have restaurant and its outdoor service going up against the convention center site, maybe another restaurant with some outdoor seating. So really taking advantage of that being an active, lively scene, maybe have some bands out on certain nights to kind of build up some attention. And really, it was about keeping the energy of retail and entertainment central to Grant and Texas, whereas you kind of let the housing and some of the offices and other small lot housing go towards the hospitals and closer to the other neighborhoods. So you get that activity in the center again and take advantage of the building structure and the building footprints. What else do we got? Sure. Well, let Scott talk about the north end.
So the Scott Theater is further north, and one of the things we talked about was there's been some talk about bringing ball fields downtown or other athletic fields or other facilities. So one of the things that we talked about is if there's going to be a new hotel here, maybe there's a spa associated with it. They haven't made that commitment. But then we talked about, okay, what about the possibility of some urban tennis courts? And then again, some additional maybe 4 or 5 story urban residential apartments. And then going back up towards the Scott Theater, maybe we can preserve that wonderful iconic sign right there, but maybe reinvent this as part of an entertainment district with some more restaurants and bars so that you've got sort of a movement from the hotel convention center with a cluster of restaurants and a cluster of restaurants and bars or whatever might make sense. And then that, again, as Brad said, it dissipates with this infill residential. So this is a very quick sketch study of what the current courthouse site could look like if the courthouse moves. And we're not suggesting that this be the architecture. But it is as you're up, it's a little wide. We think there's maybe some potential. Of course, this is, the post office is down here. But you could have maybe a stage, keep the trees that are on the north side of the courthouse and the green space, a very historic location, but maybe had some hardscape in here, maybe some food trucks that could be located for the lunch hour for people that are working down with the law offices and the various legal and public sector employees. Again, there's a lot that has to be discussed, and we're not suggesting that the courthouse has to go next door, but that is a possibility. And maybe if you've been to Dallas, like the Clyde Warren Deck Park, maybe there's a great restaurant in the park. Maybe there's an opportunity to actually build a restaurant and integrate it into the park, for example. And then we also worked on what could happen across the street, across Fifth Street, if you wanted to see what the complementary development might look like across from the plaza of the new hotel and convention center. So this is a rendering from the hotel team. This is actually looking down Fifth Street, and this would be where Jackson comes and dead ends. So it's rotated. This would be Jackson. It continues through, but this would be looking, Guang climbed up to the top of the Ector Theater. Don't anybody try that on your own. He had to go through some catwalks, and we've got a photograph of him up there. But he actually took a photograph down from the Ector. So this is if you're up on top of the Ector looking down onto the plaza with the hotel pool, the hotel here, the conference center would be over here, and then catty corner across, this could be a new 4 or 5 story urban residential apartment building with, say, restaurants on the ground floor. I think this is that lab building that's right here. As you can see, you saw that pink or that salmon color that we had here in the street. We're suggesting that maybe Fifth Street at that location be resurfaced with a surface that's flush with the plaza so that it really gives the ability to extend the proposed plaza there into the street so that maybe you can then block off with bollards Fifth Street down back towards Grant and extend and make it more of a linear extended plaza for larger activities or festivals with tents and market opportunities. This really does then extend the reach of this new community investment so that people feel like the plaza at the Hotel Convention Center is not just for the people that are at the hotel as patrons. Yeah, you could close it off temporarily. Yes, thank you. I don't want to leave the impression that we're suggesting we close off Fifth Street permanently. But you see this in front of sports facilities a lot. There's a word it's called a Wohnurf. I don't know if that's German or Dutch, but it stands for street plaza. So Strasse. So this is just a quick and and a quick study of what Fifth Street could look like with redevelopment on both sides. So with that, this is what we've done today. Please, Miloslav, you want to talk a little more about the plan?
I want to say 2 or 3 general things.
Sure.
Just actually what guides our actions. We all use the word community a lot, and a lot of times we don't really understand what it means. In our understanding, it means a web of relationships. And our role in doing projects like this is to create opportunities to initiate and sustain relationships over time. So all of these things that we're proposing, including multiple housing types, have to do actually with the relationships and with what we like to call sustainability of the neighborhood. So you can go from, say, a mansion home to a townhome or to an apartment, depending on your age, economic status, or whatever, without leaving the neighborhood. And when we talk about neighborhood downtown, we mean urban neighborhood. There are different levels of urbanity in neighborhoods. There is some that are very suburban, there are halfway, and there's some that are really urban. And this would be a very urban neighborhood. The second thing I wanted to say is that the way you measure their urbanity is by the number of unscheduled human interactions you run into in an area where you live. So that will be your yardstick. When you get to meet a lot of people you didn't plan to meet in the downtown area, that means you've succeeded. And the third thing I want to say is more than 50% of the world population today lives in cities, which means cities are interesting for many reasons. And one of the greatest reasons is because you meet other people. And the ultimate aim of urban design is empowerment. We want to empower people of all economic status, of every different economic, to enjoy the beauty we're creating. And our biggest hope in doing that is that eventually, under the auspices of what we are doing, there will be a genuine human encounter between human beings.
Thank you, Miloslav. When Miloslav and I met and started working together about 20 years ago, I'm not going to take the time to tell you about the story, but we ended up coining his name. He's the love doctor, and I think you can see why. So with that, any comments or questions?
I did have one about.
I'm going to come over here.
I think you kind of addressed it. I don't want to sound.
No, it's
on.
he's capturing it.
I don't want to sound like I'm looking for instantaneous gratification, but in the restaurant aspect of it, we lack that. I mean, tremendously in the downtown area. The people that work have to travel, and in the past 4 or 5 years, with the influx of automobiles, you can't get anywhere and back in an hour's time.
Sure.
So, not sounding again instantaneous gratification, the food truck issue is one I wanted to address until we can build the brick and mortars. I'm glad you're addressing that because that's there today. It gives us variety, keeps us downtown, and it could be, I think, the spark that starts the flame into keeping people downtown if they had an area for food trucks.
And I think that actually with what I'm hearing from the city and discussions with 4A and others, there may be an opportunity sooner than later to start that gravity of a new brick and mortar restaurant or two. And by the way, I think success is having both. The demand is already there. It's just the context is a little tough for somebody on their own to come down. And because of that chicken and the egg of the night activity, the evenings are the most profitable, the breakfasts and the lunches, unless you're like a Norma's or some other place that's been there for a while and you sort of have the market captured. But we really want to make sure that we build on the existing handful of restaurants that are here and not put them out of business, because I think it's kind of like car dealerships. They cluster. The more you have, actually, the more net total business you get to. So thank you. We do believe that the food trucks are, some people believe that they're a threat. I'm glad that this community believes that they're an opportunity.
Actually, in front of, on the back on the 5th Street, on Texas Tech, we have the trucks coming every 2 weeks, and they're very successful.
Yes. We know that you already have food truck activity here, and that's why we recommended it be expanded. Also, one of the, speaking of Texas Tech, we think one of the residential opportunities is because of the affiliation with the hospital, we think having an opportunity for some good residential downtown for the students and those that are doing their work where they wake up at odd hours go to sleep at odd hours, have to drive out and come back at odd hours. We think this might be a real opportunity to meet a demand for some housing downtown for some of the medical students. Yes?
You mentioned the drainage situation downtown. Does that mean you're talking about as far as being able to the better drainage or a drainage basin or?
Yes and yes.
No. Okay.
I'll let Brad. There, no specifics have been discussed, just that there are opportunities maybe to look at both levels.
Yeah, it's actually with Public Works and the Planning Department that we met this morning, but looking at ways to mitigate the effects of downtown by looking first upstream, trying to capture some of that water ahead of the time, but not imposing too much damage on the neighborhoods and the current buildings that are already there. And so I think one opportunity, and I think Public Works really enjoyed the discussion, was a future study at some point where looking at the opportunities to embed different types of strategies to have an overall impact in downtown. But just doing small things in downtown won't impact in the long term. It's really a regional, citywide issue. And you may never get rid of all the water, but at least some impact will help give people some assurance and clarity that their investments will be safe in particular locations. So.
And this is an economic development question, because I do think once you get momentum going, fundamentally there's still going to be a point at which the question of this major drainage challenge still looming is going to potentially impact the ability to underwrite certain projects and other questions. So we believe that a solution for downtown and a regional solution being viewed as a simultaneous opportunity is the only way it can be solved. Anyone else? Comments, questions? What are we missing? What else should we be considering? Maybe this is what you weren't expecting and it's different, so you're just sort of, not quite sure what to say, but we have worked in probably 10 communities like this. Rogers, Arkansas, McKinney, Texas, Roanoke, Texas, Owensboro, Kentucky. And I can tell you that we are as bullish about the potential you have here as anywhere we've been. Your leadership is great, your private leadership, your public leadership. The market is clearly already there. It's actually going, hey, what are you going to do to help us take advantage of what we know is an opportunity? I think it's wonderful that you actually have elected and appointed and staff leaders that believe that the public sector should actually participate and help the market become successful. At some point sooner than later, that I think the market will be able to stand on its own. But that's good economic development, that's good capitalism, and I think the combination and the leadership that you all have is the perfect storm for something to happen sooner than later. So thank you very much. Oh, yes, sir. Let me get you on, because they're taping it, so if you don't speak into this, they won't hear you.
I'm the owner of the building and the salon on the corner of 5th and Lee. And up there I see some orange space to the west of that. Is that potential housing?
It could be, but primarily restaurant is what we were proposing.
Okay.
Oh.
Small office. And
The L shape.
Oh, housing, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir,
Okay.
housing.
I just wanted that addressed a little bit more because obviously I'm interested in
Sure.
west of Grant.
Sure. So let me, this is actually, sorry, we didn't address that as well as we should have. And as you can see, we've, I think, identified at least 5 different housing types, Millisoft, maybe? So, okay, so you have little, no, I was just going to show from left to right. You've got, these are townhomes with green courts in the middle where you actually enter, because these are more kind of B streets. There's little offices there, labs, doctors' offices. So we thought if anybody was really going to want to live there, they'd need some sort of kind of respite. So these are townhomes that are served from the alley, and from the street, and they face onto these green courts. These are little townhomes where you access them from behind, and there's a little plaza and green court at the corners. These are,
That's a small office to the left.
this one right here. Yeah, small office. These are a full block of maybe 175 to 200 units that would be 4 to 5 stories with a garage in the middle with a pool. We don't think the rents are quite there yet to justify that type of construction, but we think it definitely is very possible. And so we tried to identify 2 or 3 locations where that made sense. These are residential units that are 2 to 3 stories tall with tuck-under parking and surface parking. Now, all of these assume a little bit of parking on the street, but for the most part, I think the parking probably makes sense at about 1 car per unit, which is a little less than you would normally see in a suburban location. But there's lots of surface lots out there where if additional parking would need to be secured by the developer, you already have a low parking requirement regulatorily, but oftentimes banks or lenders will require so many parking spaces for a particular restaurant or residential project before they'll actually loan the money. But that's a level of detail to be worked out. But we did, because I know you are interested with your apartment and you have demand, we did try to explore, even now at this very early stage, how much residential we could begin to see that could be an infill residential. If you even just have a few hundred people living down here in the next few years, that's going to be a game changer. Thank you very much.